Hey everyone, it's Tox from CritsHappen.com. Thanks for watching and welcome back. Today we've got another critical review of a deck building game from Bandai. This is the Resident Evil deck building game. Now the set that I have and the set that I'm going to show you is actually the Mercenaries expansion. It's not the actual base set for this. The gameplay is very similar. We'll talk a little bit about some of the specifics that Mercenaries brings to the table. It is a different type of deck building game if you're familiar with things like Dominion and Ascension. This one is very combat driven, extremely combat driven, as you may guess. If you're familiar with Resident Evil, you know what I'm going to be talking about. If you're not familiar with Resident Evil, here's a short background. All hell breaks loose, lots of zombies, kill, kill, kill. That's Resident Evil. Resident Evil was created originally as a video game series in a horror or thriller type series. I believe over in like Asia Pacific area it's actually called Biohazard. But there is an infection and there are humans who are basically turning into like zombie type creatures. And it's your job to go out and kill them and dismantle them and destroy them. Well, in this case, in this game, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be getting weapons, you're going to be getting actions, building up on your deck, and using those to defeat monsters or defeat the infected that are going to be inside a separate deck called the Mansion. And the whole goal is to defeat the big, bad, nasty boss that is inside of this deck. The thing is you're not really 100% sure where he is. So there's a little bit of gambling that's going to go on. We'll tell you about that during gameplay, but we'll sit down and show you all the different things from the characters in the game, the skill sets and how you can level up, and then all the different weapons and actions that you can play inside of Resident Evil, the deck building game. But for now, let's get our bows, let's get our custom sidearms, let's get our knives, and go kill some monsters in Resident Evil, the deck building game. So here you see the setup for Resident Evil, the deck building game. In the middle, we have our resource area. We have 6 actions, which are the blue colored cards. We have 8 weapons, which are the kind of brown colored cards. We have 1 item, which is the green colored card. And then we have ammunition. We have ammo times 10, ammo times 20, and ammo times 30. The primary resources in this game are multitudes. You're going to have ammunition, you're going to have gold, you're going to have actions, and you're going to have buys. Now anyone who's familiar with Dominion is going to be familiar with on your turn you get 1 action and you get 1 purchase. The same thing happens on this. In this game you're going to naturally be able to play 1 action. And this is a little confusing. Playing your cards from your hand is not an action. Playing an action card from your hand is an action. And you'll notice on some of these cards, for example, Tear Gas will provide you +1 action when played. Some cards, like Resuscitate, will provide you +20 gold and +1 buy. Others, for example, like Anticipation, only provide the benefits that are written in text and don't give you any additional items like cards or actions or buys. The action cards themselves are extremely varied. There's some that are going to be very, very powerful and very, very expensive. And there's going to be some that are more tactical and more methodical, but if combined together are very, very powerful. You'll also notice in the upper right of every card there is a gold symbol and a gold value. That's how much gold you have to be able to play from your hand to be able to acquire them to your deck. But in addition, you'll notice that aside from my starting deck here, which is made up of 7 ammunition times 10, we're going to have a single standard sidearm and 2 reliable blades. Those are the 10 cards that shuffle up to make your deck. You're also going to have a character. And in this case, I'm Rebecca Chambers. Now all characters have a health in their upper right. And if you die, bad things happen. We'll talk about that in a second. Then she has level 1 and a 3 next to it. The 3 is for decorations. We'll talk about decorations when we go exploring in the mansion. But for now, know this. Once we achieve 3 decorations, we become level 1. And once we do that, we have access to her ability, which says when you buy a card, you can move that card to another player's discard pile. And this is one of the interesting things about this game. It is what I would call a semi-cooperative deck builder. In that, inside of this mansion deck, which notably is different and is customizable for every game. There are scenarios that you can play, and then you can just randomly create them as well. But somewhere in this mansion is a big, bad, nasty, ugly, infected monster that you have to beat to finish the game. In this case, it is the Red Executioner who is in this mansion deck somewhere. He has a lot of health, he does a lot of damage, and you want to make sure you're prepared to be able to fight him. The challenge is you don't know where he is in that deck. He could be anywhere, so there's a lot of risks when going into the mansion. But brave heroes take risks. Let's take a look at a starting turn for Resident Evil. After you shuffle your 10 cards, you take and draw 5. And in this case, I'm going to look at my hand, and it's all basic cards. I have 4 different ammo times 10, and I have a weapon, a custom standard sidearm. Now, on your turn, you can do things in whatever format you want. So, I played my cards, and I now have 40 ammo and 40 gold to be able to use. I also am able to fuel my weapon. And what I mean by that is each weapon has a bottom bar. You'll notice that the actual title is not at the top. The type of the card is at the top. And then there's text that will tell you what happens when you get to use the card, and then the name is kind of in the lower middle. But what this card does is it requires 20 ammunition, and if you can pay 20 ammunition, then it will deal 10 damage. But in addition, you'll see on the text of this card, it says you can give this weapon plus 10 damage during this turn. In that case, trash this weapon at the end of the turn. Trashing, as you may imagine, means to remove it from your deck. And in trashing, you're not actually removing it from the game. In trashing, you're going to put it back into the resource area of the game. So here I am. I have enough ammo to fuel my gun. I can choose to make it more powerful and delete it or trash it from my deck. And I'll still have 40 gold to be able to buy something. Not too bad of a starting turn. I could, with my 1 buy action, use my 40 gold to buy a card. I could choose not to buy anything and just not explore the mansion, not to buy anything and go explore the mansion. I could do both. So why don't we dig in and see what we get? I'm going to choose to explore the mansion. Now I know I'm going to be able to do 20 damage. So the first thing I do is I announce I'm going to explore the mansion, and then I flip over the top card of the mansion deck. In this case, it's an infected monster, and it's the Tribal Magini. He has 15 health, 10 damage, and is worth 1 decoration. Now the way fighting works is really simple. I attack whatever it is that's on the top of that deck. So I'm going to attack this Tribal Magini. If I can defeat him, if my damage is greater than his health, then I defeat him and he goes under my character card and I get the decorations that he is worth. That will count towards my decorations, towards my level, and more importantly, whoever has the most decorations at the end of the game is going to be the winner. It does not mean whoever kills or destroys the most infected monsters is going to win. It is sometimes the person who just destroys the most valuable ones that ends up winning. But in addition, before we have the fight, we have to look at his text and see what he says. This card says, when this infected is revealed, each player selects and removes the top card of any resource pile in the resource area from the game. So different than trashing, which is removing a card from your deck and putting it back on the resource pile, we're going to take a card from the top of a resource pile and totally remove it from the game. Now, we would go and do that. So let's say I chose the first aid spray and my opponent chose a custom action pump action shotgun to remove from the game. Then we look at our damage versus his health. I can do 20 damage and he has 15 health. So I completely defeat him and he's going to go underneath my card and I'm going to have 1 decoration. At 2 more decorations, I'll have access to Rebecca's special power. Because I gave this the plus 10 damage, it's going to be trashed at the end of the turn. So what I like to do is just tap it like that to remind myself that it's going to go away. Now, in addition, as I mentioned, we have 40 gold and we still have 1 purchase. Now, looking at the weapons available to me, there is a really nice custom full-bore machine gun, which takes 30 ammo and does 20 damage. So if I wanted to buy that for 40 gold, I would take it, my remaining cards, put them into my discard pile, and then I would trash the card I would need to trash and put that back onto its spot in the resource row. Your custom standard sidearm and your reliable blade, along with your ammo, are going to be part of the resources available in every game. Gameplay will continue. You'll be acquiring new cards, you'll be leveling up your character to have access to their abilities, and you're going to be digging deeper and deeper into this deck. There are many different monsters, and one of the nice things that I really like about this game is that you're able to customize this deck however you want. You could make the mansion based on a scenario and they give you stories for each of the scenarios, or you could take and just randomize whatever monsters you want to make it as evil or as easy as you'd like. Now, in addition to your character's abilities, once you have the base game down, this game also gives you skill cards. And skill cards, you'll notice, will have different numbers in the upper right, which is the required experience to be able to use them. And there's different levels for each different type, level 1, level 2, and level 3. So for example, this Maximizer is going to require 2 experience points on it. And it says when your character defeats an infected worth 2 or more decorations, you get 1 XP. Well, XP is going to be acquired by different means in the game. There's going to be some actions that will let you gain XP. There's going to be just the simple act of jumping into and exploring the mansion will give you an XP. But the nice thing about it is that the skill system will reward you for digging deeper into the mansion faster. Not just from a reward standpoint and being able to kill more monsters, but in terms of getting experience points to add on to these cards to then give you more options. Now, the way that the game tells you to use these is that there's a pretty sizable stack of these cards, and they ask you to hand them out and deal them out shuffled up to players, and then you're going to draft and move them around the board. We have had a lot of fun actually tactically aligning these cards to the characters. If you're familiar with the video games and trying to pick skills that will go with those characters to give it an even deeper flair and deeper experience. But it offers a totally new level of customization for your character, which is really, in my opinion, not seen in a lot of other deck building games. Most deck building games, you're not even a character, you're not even a person. But this one takes not just the ability to have a level and an ability, but you can layer on this skill system, whether you want to or whether you not, and be able to add a little more flair to your characters and to the gameplay. Finally, there's also a thing called Mercenary Mode. And Mercenary Mode is very, very interesting. In Mercenary Mode, you and your team are basically dropped into the middle of a huge mob of infected. And your mission is very simple. You need to destroy everything around you in a quick and timely manner. And for every infected that you defeat, you've been promised a greater reward for your bravery. And what's going to happen is there's an entire bonus card that's basically going to track your time. And again, there's scenarios that you can make specific decks that are the mansion decks, or in this case, the mercenary decks for that. The play is going to be the same, but it's going to force you to really move cooperatively and start to work with your other players. The other thing which is kind of neat is that depending on the character that you choose to play in Mercenary Mode, there's different starting decks for that character. So while we told you that we started each game with the 7 ammos, the gun, and the 2 blades, if you, for example, played with Jill Valentine, you would start the game with a custom full-bore machine gun, 2 reliable blades, a custom pump action shotgun, an ammo times 20, and 5 ammo times 10. So you can totally mix and match, and this is just in one expansion. There's a lot of variables, a lot of different things to take in, but really the core rules at the end of the day are very, very simple. Pick a character, start with 10 basic cards, use gold to buy more cards, use your 1 action and your 1 buy to increase and manipulate your deck to become more efficient, and gain as many actions cards to get more actions and more buys so you can do even more combinations on your turn. All in the hope of having the most damage to deal when you go searching throughout this mansion deck. And finding that final red executioner in this game is the big bad monster, and if you defeat him, the game will be over. And at that point, whoever has the most decorations is the winner of the game. So that's Resident Evil, the deck building game. Component-wise, this game is very interesting. The cards are very good quality. They're good stock. The artwork is really cool. It's very video game / realistic. The characters and the images on the actions are going to jump right out at you from the video game. The weapons look very different. When you physically look at them, there are differences in the guns, differences in the bows, the shotguns, and all of those things. The one thing that I had some issues with, as mentioned, the text is really small on these cards. That was kind of annoying. The layout of the cards is a little weird to get used to. Once you get used to it, you got it down. But the initial couple of games, it's a little odd because the type of the card is at the top, the name of the card is toward the bottom, the actual ability of the card is printed usually above the name, but the bonuses it gives you is printed below the name. So it's a little weird to get used to. The other thing too, and I really felt like they missed a big opportunity here, these skill cards are really cool. In fact, the whole skill system is really cool. But these generic pictures were a real letdown. I really feel like there could have been a lot more to that, given how much is available from this genre. Resident Evil has been everything. It's been a movie, it's been a video game, it's been a comic book, it's been an anime. I mean, it's, apart from being lunchboxes, which I'm sure it probably is somewhere, there's a lot of art to pull from. And being that they've used a lot of the video game scenes, I'm really kind of surprised that they didn't put that onto the skill cards to just separate them a little bit. I think they did it because of the levels, level 1, level 2, level 3 for each of the named skill cards. But I thought that was an opportunity they could have done a little bit better on. So it's a little wonky and a little weird to get used to from a layout, but once you've got that, it's really not that bad. So component-wise, I would say very good components. A little different to get used to, but once you're used to them, you're going to become comfortable with it. From a gameplay perspective, it's interesting. Without the skill system, the basic setup is very cool. You have a resource setup, you have one action, you have one buy, very familiar for deck building fans, and you have combat where you're facing against these monsters. The problem becomes this: whether you're playing with the skill system or without the skill system, you're always a little trepidatious about going into the mansion. In fact, the XP you get from going into the mansion to put onto your skills is kind of a forced way of exploring the mansion so that you'll get better stuff for your character. However, you're going to take a lot of damage, and taking damage is obviously bad because you're going to die, and if you die twice, you're out. You're done. If you die once, you're going to come back, you're going to have half health, you're going to shuffle up your cards, and you're going to continue on. You're going to have first aid spray and cards like that will let you add health back to you, so that it will become a part of the gameplay as you go through. But when you're really dealing with the crux of the gameplay of get all these cool weapons, ammo them up and power them up, and then go hunting things, the problem becomes when you have 2 or 3 turns in a row where you thought you had a good amount of power and you get some pretty rough monsters, that's going to get really painful. This game is not 100% easy, it's not 100% hard. We have found that with multiple players, 4 players, you're going to have an easier time of getting through the standard mansion decks that they give you. So for a 2-player game, that's going to be really good. For a 4-player game, you're going to want to really customize these and make them a little more challenging and a little harder. But gameplay, what we've noticed happens is each of these stacks of cards, there's only 5 of them in it, apart from your starting sidearm and your knife. So you're only going to have so many combos available to you. You're only going to start to realize, hey, if I put this 1 or 2 cards on my deck, I need to really only buy these 1 or 2 other cards to really maximize my efficiency. And what we found was a lot of times we were streamlining our deck so quick and so early, we knew how much damage we were going to be able to do, we knew how fast we were going to be able to dig in this deck, and it really became more of a just turn the screws and tighten the nuts and bolts and move on through the gameplay. We knew sooner or later, once we found the executioner, we were going to beat him. Now, that may be, granted, that this is only the expansion that we're playing with. And I'm sure, just from looking at some of the other cards online, that combining this with the base set or this with other expansions is really going to open that up. But if all you're going to do is get this expansion and only this expansion, that may be your experience as well. Now, from an experience with other players perspective, this game has a lot going for it. There are a lot of things moving back and forth, a lot of times where you're seeing people buy cards, and because the stacks are so limited, you really have to adjust what it is you're going to do to maximize your deck. And then of course, there's always the fun of, nah man, go into the mansion, it's all cool, you've got it, don't worry about it. And then of course you egg somebody into it, they get killed or they get damaged because somebody big comes out. But the interesting thing is all the abilities on these infected cards are really going to impact not just the player that goes exploring in the mansion. So while you'll want to kind of push somebody through the door and take the first hit, they may not always be the ones taking the hit. It may actually be you. So that was a really neat piece of experience to the gameplay. You're always engaged, you're always highly interested in what the other people are doing in the game, and you're taking cues from them as to when is a good time. You know, if there's a 4-player game, I end my turn and I see each of the next 3 players explore the mansion and a really big monster comes out, I know there's probably a good chance that a not so big monster is going to come out, so maybe my turn is not going to be as dangerous as I think it is. Now the nice thing is this is completely randomized. Even though there's the standard decks or the standard setups that they give you in the rulebook, you don't know where that red executioner is. You don't know where the big bad guys are. And they give you quite a bit. So this is just a standard mansion deck, and these are all the additional infecteds that you can have. And there's a lot of different scenarios actually in this setup. I was actually really happy with that. So, where does all this lead us to? Well, quite frankly, it's a hit of a game. It is a crit of a game if you're a Resident Evil fan. Quite frankly, if I was a Resident Evil fan, a huge fan of this genre, and I loved tabletop games, there'd be no reason I wouldn't run out and buy it. But for the general masses, who may or may not be utterly thrilled with the whole genre of Resident Evil, it is a very sound, very well designed game. And again, this is just talking about just this expansion. The actions are very well balanced. The weapons are very well balanced. The challenges that we had were just the simple fact that after a couple of turns, you realized where your deck was going, you knew how to streamline, and you knew what to build for, and it became a little bit more of a linear experience than we would have wanted it to be. Now, that said, just because this is a hit doesn't mean that anything else is not a crit or not a miss. Each set is always going to be different. Each cards, are always going to be different. I highly suggest that if you're going to invest in a game like this, take the time, do some research on Board Game Geek or some other sites on Bandai.com, look at the different cards and start to learn the rules and understand how they're going to interact together. Some people may thoroughly, completely enjoy just this game and just this expansion. Some people would prefer to have this with the base set, or some people would prefer to have all the different sets together and combine them together. However you do it though, it is a really fun experience. It is a different experience for a deck builder. It does take a little getting used to, but there is enough familiarity that's going to bring you back and say, okay, I know what I'm doing, and now I want to lay on this skill system. Now I want to do more. I want to customize this. I want to have a deeper experience. There's just a lot of replayability and a lot of fun involved with the game. We've thoroughly enjoyed it. We'd like to thank the folks at Bandai. They provided us a copy of this game to review for you. And if you have a sec, I would highly suggest to check out their website at bandai.com. You can find out more information about this game and about all the other expansions as well. Another great resource is Board Game Geek. You can find tons of information on there as well. And in our written review, we'll have links to that at the bottom in our resources area. But until we see you next time, thank you so much for watching. Let us know your thoughts. Feel free to leave your comments here on the YouTube channel. You can, of course, find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Google Plus by searching Crits Happen, and at our homepage at critshappen.com. But until we see you next time, we hope that you enjoy all your pump-action shotgun fun times inside the Mansion of Infected with the Resident Evil deck building game. Thanks so much for watching. Keep rolling those dice, and we hope they're all crits.